What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Fantasy Files podcast. We are your co-hosts, Spencer and Gabe, and today we are joined by my friend Isaac. In real life, we are actually inhabiting the same space currently. And he is here because he is super into Star Wars and knows all sorts of stuff about it. And that is going to be super helpful since today we're discussing The Heir to the Empire, the first book in the Thrawn Trilogy from, as I understand it, the old extended universe of the Star Wars canon and books and whatnot. And so, yeah, we're going to jump into all that in just a moment. But first, if you're new here, do us a favor and hit that subscribe and notification button down below to see when we post new stuff. Honestly, I'm not sure why there's two separate buttons for that same like general function, but that's just the world we live in, I guess. You can also reach out to us on Twitter and Discord, which are both linked down in the description. We also now have a Patreon page where you can send us a little bit of money and you get exclusive content. We have bookmarks that you can download and print out for yourself. And yeah, we have more stuff that we are committed to bringing to that platform. So if you'd like to support us there, that would be awesome. That will also be linked in the description. But yeah, with all that out of the way, let's talk quickly about what we've been reading, and then we'll kind of introduce Isaac, and we'll talk about like his history with Star Wars. So yeah, Gabe, is there anything that you've kind of been reading besides Heir to the Empire?
Yeah, I've just been doing you threw out a couple recommendations. There was a horror book that was The Splendor of Fear. I read that, loved it. That
Yes.
was a short one. It was like three hours or something like that, but it was really good.
Yeah.
And then really, man, just been kind of rereading stuff. I'm currently rereading. I'm almost done with the last four books in Galaxy's Edge, so I'm uh rereading those. And then yeah, I don't really know where I'm gonna go next. I
Okay.
read Ascendant and liked it, and I think I
Oh,
probably
cool.
will go on to the next one of that.
Oh, sick. Okay, I
Um,
can ask him for another code to
yeah, that'd be
the
cool
next book.
because I would read it for sure.
Okay, cool. There was a book that somebody recommended for you.
Ooh, it's my favorite
Um,
words right there, dude.
yes, and I believe it's called The Art of the Adept.
The Art of the Adept.
Yes, Art of the Adept is the series. The first book is called The Choice of Magic.
The Choice of Magic. Okay.
And he describes it as it's more like King Killer with a straight timeline instead of the timeline that kind of bounces back and forth, and a sense of humor. Really fun. If I remember correctly, Kel Cade said that he was a friend of hers, the author of this book.
Sweet.
And this is someone who says they're really into King's Dark Tidings. So
Nice. All right,
I
cool.
think it might be a
Sold.
good fit. Yeah. All right. So yes, I also read The Splendor of Fear. This was a like genuinely terrifying book. Like I loved it. I feel like I have tried so many horror books and I have not been able to get scared because I think that just books as a medium, it's really hard to scare someone. Like you don't have when you're watching a horror movie, you have like the sounds and the visuals, and there's so much more to kind of interact with you and put you in that space. And so it really takes a lot for a book to like actually scare me. The other one that did it fairly recently was Bone White, that I think we mentioned backstage earlier, by Ronald Malfi.
Yep.
And that one like genuinely scared me. There's more than a couple scenes in that book that like had me like turning on lights in my house and just kind of like being a little like freaked out.
Gosh.
There's a kid that wears a very like gory mask, and that's always freaky in a horror setting.
Yeah.
But The Splendor of Fear was interesting. So it's kind of about it's like a girlfriend and her boyfriend who have been, I think, living together for like years. They've kind of been content, like not to get married or whatever, but they're getting to a point where, you know, they're getting older, they're getting into like their 30s, they've finished college and stuff, and she's like, well, he probably should like propose to me at some point. And so out of the blue, her boyfriend is like, hey, I want to take us on a camping trip. And she is very much a city girl. She does not go into the country. She doesn't like camping. She doesn't like hiking, nothing like that. And this isn't like a discussion for Splendor of Fear or anything, but I will just say, I'm like, man, if you're going to propose to your girlfriend, maybe do something she likes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like maybe,
Yeah.
maybe don't be like, hey, I know exactly what you don't like. I'm going to take you camping and that's where I'm going to propose to you. Maybe figure out the thing that she enjoys doing and
Right.
propose to her doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he sets this whole thing up. Like she's fairly certain from the beginning that he's going to propose to her on this camping trip. And so that's the only reason why she agrees to it. They go way out into this place. And as they're going out, she's like researching more about this like campground and like the state park and stuff. And turns out that 200 years prior, it was like it was a place where like witches had been burned at the stake, essentially.
Trials,
yeah, there was like witch hunts and stuff. And so then, of course, because it's a story and it has to have like plot convenience and whatnot, it just so happens that the weekend they're going out there is the 200th anniversary of the day that all this went down. And so the park is completely empty. Even like the park rangers and everything are like, yeah, we're not going to have anybody at the park while like during this weekend every year because spooky stuff happens. And this couple is just like, nah, it'll be fine. So they go out there, and sure enough, a lot of really, really terrifying stuff happens.
Oh no.
And you know, at first it seems like campy, and it's like, okay, like whatever, it's just like a fun campy book. But then it kind of turns into like this really like series of unfortunate events, just thing after thing happens. And I think the reason why it scared me so much was the book does a really good job of describing what it's like to be alone in the dark in the middle of the woods with no compass, no flashlight, no phone, no nothing, and you're just trying to find your way out of there. And there's an evil witch's spirit like hunting you. And dude, there was so many like terrifying moments that just had me like sweating. It was really well done. So I very much enjoyed The Splendor of Fear as well. And that's by Ambrose. Do you remember, Gabe?
I got it right here.
Ambrose Ibsen, is that it?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so highly recommend that one. That will certainly be on the list for our Halloween episode this year. What else? So then, speaking of our Halloween episode, I've been reading a couple other things, trying to find more like spooky books that we can bring into our Halloween episode and kind of talk about. I tried Asylum by Ambrose Ibsen. That one was good, but not nearly as spooky as Splendor of Fear. And then I tried A Shadow on the Wall by Jonathan Aycliffe and Maeve Fly by CJ Lead. And just neither of them are scary. Like I read the description for them and they both seemed scary. Like the one of the first ones I mentioned is about like a haunted like Catholic church, and there's like some evil like buried underneath the church or whatever, and it kind of got dug up by someone going exploring down there. It's like this abandoned cathedral or whatever. It was more like a, not like documentary, but it was more like a guy telling the story about another guy that like went through all this stuff. And so you're hearing all of it from like almost like a third source. It was really odd. I was just like, this isn't clicking for me. And then the other one is just about a girl that is really like sadistic and is basically not like a serial killer, but almost like Dexter, where she lives like a fairly normal life, and then like once in a while like this thing will happen where she like has to kill somebody. And I'm like, I'm enjoying the book because I like Dexter, but Dexter isn't necessarily scary.
Yeah.
Like it's a cool show. Dexter is probably one of my top 3 favorite shows of all time, but it's not scary. So I'm still on the hunt for more horror books, something that'll freak me out a little bit. So we'll see what happens.
Send them my way as you find them.
I will for sure. All right.
Before we move on though, before we move on from this section, I don't know. I know that you haven't played it yet, but I've been playing Assassin's Creed Mirage.
Do
you play video games?
Isaac?
Limited. I play Star Wars video games.
Okay. All right. Hey, fair enough.
Yeah. So the last game I played was the new Lego Star Wars game.
Oh, nice.
Have you tried like the Jedi Survivor or Jedi?
I haven't made the purchase yet. I've been actually watching someone play it on YouTube.
Yeah.
And it's been sweet.
Yeah.
It's super cool. I'm super
excited. They are cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, anyways, Spencer, buy it because you need to play it because it is not what you said in the text message at all.
Really? Okay.
Not at all.
I don't know. In the reviews, it was saying that the main story is mostly like the hunting down the cult of Cosmos kind of thing.
I mean, technically it is, but that's like, I guess, the main focus. But there's so much actual story of like Basim and everybody in Baghdad and stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I'm really liking it a lot.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna check it out. I'm just like, I don't know. I've spent so much money on video games recently that I'm like, I don't know if I should be buying like another like $50 game.
Yeah.
Plus Alan Wake 2 comes out in like literally 20 days from the time of this recording.
Nice.
And so I'm like, do I want to buy Assassin's Creed for 50 and then have to spend 70 on Alan Wake 2? I'm just like, there's too much coming out, and I just can't.
It's a good thing though. I'm glad there's too much coming out.
This has by far been the best year in years for video games.
Yeah.
Like there's literally like at least 20 games that have come out this year that are like contenders for game of the year.
Wow.
Yeah. Like it is. And I think it's all the stuff that kind of got backed up during COVID and that they just weren't able to like have the manpower to like put into it.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And so all of this stuff that is from like a couple of years ago that all got put on hold is now coming out, and it's just hit after hit after hit after hit. It's so good.
I mean, that's kind of the same with movies. Like there were a ton of movies that came out over the last few months this summer.
Yeah. I'm sure Oppenheimer was one
that
probably got pushed out from COVID and stuff. But yeah, good stuff. All right, so let's talk about Star Wars, guys. We're gonna start with some kind of lighter, spoiler-free stuff as we talk to Isaac here about kind of his history with Star Wars, and like I know that you grew up with it, and it's very much just something that's been a huge part of your life. And that's why I really wanted to do this episode, was because I knew that it was such a passion for you. And I was like,
totally.
I'm like, there's Star Wars books that I've been meaning to read.
Heck yeah.
And so like, why don't we like, get together and make an episode on this? And so I'm excited to talk to you about that. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Gabe, but I think both of our backgrounds on Star Wars would be that we've seen the movies and we liked them, but it's not something we visit all the time.
Yeah.
How I would describe my relationship with it.
I used to visit it all the time, when I was younger, I guess. And I loved them, and there was a point in time where I watched a different Star Wars movie every night for months.
Oh, okay.
But that was, when I was like 7 or 8 years old.
Oh, okay. I see.
Been a long time. But yeah, I love it still. Yeah. I'm always open for some Star Wars.
Cool. So yeah, so how did you start like watching Star Wars and getting into it that young?
Yeah, when I was little. So my dad was a teacher. He's a music teacher at an elementary school, and he was friends with the janitor. And the janitor is actually the one that he on VHS, recorded off the TV,
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
no
like
way.
the original series with commercials and everything.
That's
And I
awesome.
can't remember what came first, if he gave me like a little R2D2,
Oh,
and he
what?
gave me a sand trooper that was all like kind of chewed up
Yeah.
by his dog.
Yeah.
But I had those two action figures and then the VHS. And so I have like faint memories of being a little kid watching it on my TV
That's
and
awesome.
playing with those toys. And then I remember the prequels, when the prequels came, when the episode 1 came out. I was still kind of young, and my parents told me to go to bed. Well, them and my aunt, I think my aunt and uncle or my cousins or someone I was related to, they were there and they were gonna watch it. And I just thought, that'd be crazy if they watch this and hear this story. Oh, that's funny. All right. Well, hey, I'm gonna share it anyways. Yeah.
There you
So
go.
my room that was like right next to the living room, and the door was like left cracked open, and they watched episode 1, and I remember the moment when Darth Maul comes out with that double
Oh,
lightsaber.
yeah.
Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are getting ready to like duel this like missing Sith or whatever, and just that red and black
Yep.
face with the horns was like terrifying,
Yeah.
but so cool. Like the
Yeah.
double lightsaber was so cool.
Yeah.
And I think that, that's those are my earliest Star Wars memories.
Okay.
Was that, yeah.
So then over the next, several years, as you kind of got older and like went through high school and eventually into college, how did like Star Wars kind of play a role in your life? Were you into it like all the way through, like all the way up until now?
Yeah, that's hard to say officially. I think that I was like off and on. And I think that I got a little closeted about it because I was,
sure.
I was trying to be like cool, or maybe
Yep.
I was trying to find identity and stuff. And so I think honestly, leaning into being a Star Wars fan has been a more recent thing for me. Like,
Okay.
I've always really enjoyed it,
Mhm.
but it hasn't been until like the last 3 or 4 years where
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not trying to impress anyone.
True
Like,
that.
Right.
I think this is cool.
Yep.
Right.
And
Yep.
yeah, and only yeah, well, and then when they re-sparked the whole like, well, Disney bought it and they came out with the Rebels cartoon, I was kind of like, what?
Yeah.
I'm not into this. Like, they've already, Star Wars is Star Wars. They can't add more. I was really upset that they made Ezra, who was a Jedi, and I was like,
Okay.
Luke was supposed to be the only Jedi at this time.
Right.
But so I didn't watch Rebels when it came out. And then, but when they came out with episode 7, I was super hyped. And I think that's when it kind of like the nostalgia of being a kid came back, and it was like, oh yeah, I'm back. I'm all into this.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, so my birthday is May 19th. And that's when I think episode 1 or 2, I'm not sure.
Oh.
But episode 3 for sure came out. And I actually saw episode 3
On your birthday.
on the premiere on my birthday.
Dude,
I went with
that's
my dad or
awesome.
something.
That's
It
awesome.
was, it was super awesome.
That's cool. Yeah, that's funny that you mentioned the whole kind of like being closeted about Star Wars thing. I was actually thinking about this like I think yesterday, where I was like, man, there was a solid period of time where I was just like, and I think most of it was like near the end of high school, like mid to end of high school, and then kind of like into my early 20s, where I was like, no, I don't play video games. Like, no, I don't read. Like, that's nerd stuff. Like, it, and I don't know. There was a period of time where that kind of stuff was, and I don't know if it was, but it felt distinctly not cool.
Right.
And then something has happened in the past, probably about like the past 4 years, 5 years, something like that. And I think the Marvel movies have done a lot to benefit this, but like nerd culture in general is just like more of a thing.
Oh,
like
yeah.
it's just more, it's more mainstream. You go into any Walmart and you'll see a million t-shirts for like, you know, Captain America or Iron Man, or even like I've seen Legend of Zelda shirts in like Walmarts or
Right.
Targets or whatever. And you know, you're seeing like way more people go around with like, I don't know, like a Legend of Zelda keychain on their bag or something. It's all over the place now. And so it's kind of funny to look at how I once viewed it like, oh, I can't tell anybody about this, to now it's like a regular point of conversation. And just about
Right.
anybody I talk to nowadays, like even my friends that aren't really into like fantasy or, you know, sci-fi or anything like that, like Ransom, like I talk about this stuff all the time with him, just because it's more people understand it now, more, it's part of the mainstream nowadays. I don't know, it's kind of interesting. So anyway, that whole monologue aside, sorry, let's talk about some of our general thoughts on the book in general. And we will be going into spoilers. So anybody that is watching or listening to this, just know that if you haven't read Heir to the Empire, we're going to spoil everything in the book. We haven't read the rest of the trilogy, so we're not spoiling anything beyond this. But Heir to the Empire will be spoiled in 3, 2, 1. You've been warned. we did not plan that, and I'm so glad that worked out to where we all pointed at the same time. Cool. That was great.
Totally.
All right, so let's go around and kind of say, you know, generally what we thought about this book. We'll get into specifics in a minute here. But I'll save mine for last, because I feel like I have a pretty strong opinion in one direction. And so I don't want to bias anybody. So I'm interested to hear you guys. Let's start with Gabe.
Yeah, no, so this one was my first forte back into Star Wars, and you know, like I said, it's been a very long time. So when we first started, you know, the book opens up and we first start seeing characters Luke and Leia and Han, I had to like really think about like what was going on prior. Like in my head, I was like, wait, oh yeah, that's right. Luke and Leia are brother and sister. Okay, know that. And I was like, oh, she's with Han? And I was like, when did that happen? And I was like,
oh wow.
Yeah, dude, that's how much like I had to like, but once I realized what was going on, I got back into it, and yeah, I enjoyed it. There was a couple things about the audiobook that I didn't, and Spencer told me that there is an option. Some of the sounds you know, in my headphones were kind of distracting, which again, not anything bad about the book, but so that I think took away a little bit.
There was overall, also kind of like a background.
It was, and that's the only thing. The sounds, like the actual like doors opening, blasters, all that was fine. But like when they were in like, let's say, a ship battle, there was just this like slight rumbling in the background that like that it just bothered me.
Like intentionally it was supposed to be an effect.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So the way that I understood that was, you know, if you go back and you watch that original trilogy, anytime they're in a ship or anything, there is like I think the audiobook had a slightly higher volume, but like in those original movies, sometimes you would hear like the background of the ship just kind of like a thing like that. And I think they were trying to mimic that, but I think that it wasn't quite mixed right. I had a much higher tolerance for it than Gabe did. And then after he like, we were texting about it, and after he told me, I like paid attention to it more, and I was like, yeah, I could certainly see how that would get annoying. But I think, I don't know, I don't think it's right or wrong to feel one way or the other about it. I didn't really mind it at all, but I can definitely see how that would bug you for sure.
And then and you know, it only happened in a couple chapters or whatever that it was like really noticeable, unbearable. But yeah, man, overall I was pretty happy with it. I really enjoyed the story, and it was just kind of just a trip down memory lane to like, you know, be a part of these characters again that I haven't in, you know, 15 years. So yeah, no, I had fun with it.
Nice. Okay. What about you?
it's totally like a trip down memory lane. I
Yeah.
think one of the things that was hard for me first getting into it was um just that there's so much Star Wars now that just the timeline, there's like it's all over the place. And I
Right.
think my brain was still in this like Mandalorian,
Right.
like the show's world right now.
Yeah.
And
Because
then
this is a very different timeline than anything we've seen on Disney Plus.
yeah, like this takes
Yeah.
place. Yeah. And hopping back into oh yeah, I'm reading about Luke, Leia, Han, Chewie was like, all right, get back into
That's right.
get back into
Yep.
this
Original trilogy,
headspace.
yeah.
Back.
It's like the same. It's Star Wars, but there's so much Star Wars that it's like this specific
Right.
Star Wars, I guess.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the first thing. But once I was into it, and actually once I was into it, I was into it. You know,
Yeah.
it was just like every time I read the paperback,
Yeah.
and every time I picked it up, it felt like I was getting ready to like watch the next or read the next adventure. You
Right.
know,
Yep.
even though it was one big story, it was like
Oh yeah.
reading just the next event in the
Yep.
overarching plot. And yeah, and it's actually so this is the second attempt to read it. The first time I actually stopped like halfway through.
Oh
Yeah,
okay.
because I'm not the most disciplined reader.
Yeah.
But that's something that I am working on, and I'm getting a lot better. I finished it. So
Nice. There you go.
Good job.
Totally. That's a
yeah,
win, dude.
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah. But I really enjoyed it. I think it's cool. I know how special it is to Star Wars people that
Yeah.
this book and the whole trilogy, like people that were around for the original movies when they came out. This book was like the next big Star Wars thing.
Right.
And so when I read it, I have like it's like weird to apply this word to Star Wars or to stuff like this, but I have a little bit of reverence for it. I'm like,
Oh
all right,
yeah, for sure.
I got to
yeah.
read this and look for
Totally.
what people appreciated about it. And like
Without a doubt.
keeping in mind too that the prequels, everything else hadn't even
Hadn't
been
happened
made yet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the whole idea of the Clone Wars, people are just speculating. Like Obi-Wan says, "Oh, I don't know, I can't remember the line, but Obi-Wan says like, I fought with your father during the Clone Wars or something," and people are just speculating what the Clone Wars were and like stuff like that. So, yeah, I was just I think that was probably the most special thing and the most cool thing was jumping into this book,
Yeah.
trying to get into the mindset of like, what would it be like to read this and not know? Yeah. And I've met people that did read this when they came out.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, have you ever read the Thrawn Trilogy by Timothy Zahn? And I'll be like, oh yeah, I started it. And they're like, oh, I loved that book. And they're just like stoked. And then they share stuff how they were kind of let down by the sequel trilogy that came out with Kylo Ren and they were kind of let down by that because it didn't line up really much at all with this book. Yeah. But overall, I enjoyed it. But honestly, sometimes I feel like Star Wars could be just like they could just make a 2-hour time lapse of the garbage compactor and I'll just be stoked.
You're like, yes, dude, let's go.
This is awesome.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
this is awesome.
Yeah.
That's funny.
That's cool.
Yeah, you mentioned that there is a sort of reverence for this book, and that is exactly why I wanted to read it, is because even me not knowing hardly anything, I mean, like I know about Star Wars, I know like all the different characters and how they generally connect and whatnot, but someone like me who's very much like on the outside of the fandom, Heir to the Empire is something that's always been like, you have to read it. Like it is like the Bible of Star Wars as far as some people are concerned. And I put it off for a long time. But you're right. It's something that the fandom just kind of adheres to as this is even though it's not necessarily official nowadays with all the Disney Plus stuff, and like they kind of decided to go a different route from the books, a lot of fans believe that this is like the official next step for, or like the canon,
Right,
canon next step
right.
for Luke and Leia and Han and all those guys. So yeah, I was really, really interested to read it. So yeah, basically, long story short, I loved this book. Like I loved it so much. How I typically listen to an audiobook nowadays, after doing the podcast for almost 3 years now.
Yeah.
And it used to be that I would turn on a book in the morning and listen to it until I go to sleep, and then probably finish it that day, and then start a new book the next day, and just like keep like constantly reading.
That's awesome.
Now I'm really into like YouTube and stuff, and so I will start the morning with like a couple YouTube videos, and then somewhere throughout the day I'll listen to my audiobook for like 3 or 4 hours, then I'll go back to YouTube, then I'll go back to the audiobook. Dude, I started this book and it was like how I used to read audiobooks.
Oh wow.
I could not stop listening to this thing. I enjoyed it so much.
Wow.
And you know what's funny for me, I'm kind of one of those people. I haven't seen a lot of the new Disney Plus content, so I don't have a lot of that kind of like muddying up my head. I have very vivid memories of the original trilogy and those characters and everything that kind of happened. And so jumping into this, I've heard on the internet several times where people are like, oh, they should have made Heir to the Empire episode 7 instead of everything with like Rey and all those guys. People are like, yeah, Heir to the Empire is like the obvious like next movie. And in my head, like I hadn't read this yet, and so I was like, I don't know, like maybe they couldn't adapt the book, or maybe they couldn't find a way to like work it into like how a movie would work. Dude, listening to this audiobook, I was like, this would be a perfect Star Wars movie. This would be so good.
Absolutely.
Like, I want to see this book on the screen so bad. Like, everything about it would fit so perfectly for a movie. Even thinking about like the parts where Luke and Mara are like stranded out in the woods, and like the Imperials are just on the other side of like, the mountains or whatever, or the trees. And oh man, every single scene I could see it, like how it would be portrayed, like in the same style as that like original trilogy. And this was not a book that I expected to like as much as I did. I knew that I would enjoy it and that I would have fun discussing it with you guys, but I did not know that this book was going to like just completely override everything else. Awesome. I finished it, and I'm already getting the kind of final thoughts stuff, but I finished it and I was like, I want to keep going for sure.
Nice.
So yeah, I had just a fantastic time with this book, and even while listening to it, I was like, is this the thing that like gets me into Star Wars? Because like I said, I've seen the movies and stuff, and I've enjoyed them. Like I don't have anything bad to say about them except for the newest stuff. But I've never, like I mentioned earlier, I've never been like a massive Star Wars fan. But reading this book, I'm like, oh, if there's more books like this, I'm absolutely going to read them. Like I'm gonna get so into this. And so I don't know, this might be like my new Harry Potter, you know what I mean? Like this
I was just gonna say, it sounds like exactly what happened with Harry Potter.
And that's the other interesting thing too, is that I had read Harry Potter recently for the very first time, and
that's crazy,
completely fallen in love with it, and just completely like gone 100% down the Harry Potter rabbit hole for the first time in my life. And then after finishing that series and finishing like the movies and every other piece of content I could possibly consume about Harry Potter, I got out of that and I was like, what do I do now? Like nothing is as good as this. And so I tried reading several fantasy books, and I'm like, it's just not working. Like nothing is working. And so
Oh, that's awesome.
and so yeah, and so then hopping into this book, obviously this book is not Harry Potter, but it is the first book since Harry Potter that has made me be like, I have to read the next one like right away. And if we weren't doing a Halloween episode like in the next week or so, then I would for sure be going on to the sequel of this book and just plummeting through this trilogy because I loved it. I loved it so much.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's cool to hear you saying that you liked it so much. I know I think I knew a little bit about at least you kind of being aware of Star Wars,
Right.
but not having like the full engagement with it.
Yeah.
And so, just what's that called? Just like your
preconceived notions.
Yeah, I guess. And just like, because for some reason I'm so tied to Star Wars.
Yeah.
I had this thought of like, all right, I really like this book, but what if I come into this and they didn't?
Oh, no.
I was like, yeah, it's like, yeah. So I was just like ready to, for whatever,
Yeah.
So it's cool that you really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's like it's kind of like you coming over to my house and you like coming to my house, even though it's like, it's my house,
Right.
I'm fine with my house, but I don't know what other people think about my house or whatever.
That's so
but
true.
Yep.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. You liked it so much.
Yeah, I had a great time. I think even just like I don't know, just like everything about it, like I have no connection to Wookiees or even like Chewbacca or anything like that. But when I found out we were going to the Wookiee planet,
Yeah,
I was
Kashyyyk.
like,
Yeah.
what?
Kashyyyk,
Let's
yep.
go.
Yeah, I got really excited about
That's
that.
a cool planet.
Yeah,
That's a place I'd like to go to if it was real.
for
Oh
sure.
yeah, that was so cool. Just everything being up in the trees, because everything that's on the ground will absolutely kill you.
Yep.
It was such a cool, I don't know, it's such a cool idea. Like anytime Luke was in an X-Wing and like any of that was like being described, just him like flying.
Yep.
Or
having to do some crazy like things to get out of, near death. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my god. Or even just like the new stuff they introduced, like the new aliens that were kind of hunting
The gray, what did Leia call them? The gray something?
Do you remember what these were called? Like the
Nogri?
The Nogri.
Nogri, okay.
Yeah, they were like hunting Leia and Han was like trying to protect her.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked those. Those
are cool.
I don't know if those are part of like Star Wars lore or if those are a new thing.
I think they were introduced in the book.
Okay.
So I did go back and rewatch Rebels. I've watched it through a couple times.
Okay.
And Thrawn is in it. And then there's like a different version of the Nogri in it. And there's just one of them.
Oh.
And it's not as cool as the book.
Yeah.
It's nice that they nodded to it, but it's not
right.
Yeah. The Nogri don't get any attention.
Okay.
In canon.
Yeah, I like that. I like that whole storyline of her going to the next place and like, how are they here? Like, how are they finding us? And just that whole kind of I guess mystery, but just like the whole suspense of like, can she get anywhere that is safe? And I think I actually have some questions about that as we get further on.
I've got a when you're done, I have a quick question.
No, go for it. I'm good.
So you were just talking about the Rebels, Star Wars Rebels, and that is the animated one. Is that different from the animated Clone Wars?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming it is, because I've watched I remember watching all of the Clone Wars, and I was hooked on that. But I've never seen Rebels, so I'm like, man, I should go watch that.
Yeah, where does that fit into the timeline?
Yeah, so Rebels leads up to A New Hope.
Oh.
So it's a similar time as Heir to the Empire.
Okay.
Yeah, it's years after Episode 3. So Darth Vader exists. The Empire is established. Yeah, it's actually done by Dave Filoni, who's been doing all the Mandalorian and Ahsoka and stuff. And
That's cool.
Yeah, and he it's cool. Like Dave Filoni, when he got asked to do Star Wars, I think the previous thing that he had done Maybe someone can correct me if I'm wrong, because this is information from my past. I can't remember where I learned it.
Sure.
But Dave Filoni, the last thing he was working on was Avatar: The Last Airbender, like that animated show on
Oh,
Nickelodeon.
cool.
And
Yes.
so
Love
then he,
Avatar.
yeah, and then oh no, yeah, I'm remembering this wrong. Dave Filoni did work on Clone Wars. He was Clone Wars, like that was his
Okay.
thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so to me, watching Rebels, once I finally accepted that I was gonna watch Rebels,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is kind of like animated Avatar: The Last Airbender, like where they're instead of a flying bison, it's the ghost ship, like,
Cool.
and Ezra is kind of like the Avatar, but he's a Jedi, and
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, see, that sounds awesome.
yeah,
That sounds really cool.
yeah, and they have it's cool. It is a cool show, and I think people right now, because Ahsoka, the new show that came
Mhm.
out, has like, I mean, all the characters are from the Rebels show,
Yeah.
Right.
and I think people feel like left out of the story because they're watching Ahsoka, but they're like, oh
They haven't.
man, I don't know all this stuff. But I've
Yeah.
talked to a few people, and there's some things that are referred to in the show that actually is not in Rebels. It's just it's new content for Ahsoka. But I think
okay.
people have this preconceived notion that's like, oh, I missed out on everything because I didn't watch that show or whatever.
Okay.
No, but it's a great show. You should watch it. It'll
I'm
enrich your
gonna.
Star Wars
Yes.
appreciation
Okay.
for sure.
Absolutely.
Sweet. All right, so let's see what else do I have here in general thoughts. So the three notes that I have, first of all, it was great to see all the characters again. I know we all kind of touched on that, just being able to see like Han and Luke and Leia and just all of the characters that I grew up with. Like I also grew up with the prequels, so like Anakin and Padme and all of them are very much a part of my childhood. But I have such specific memories with like Luke and Leia and all those characters. That was really, really cool to hop back into that. I liked that it was very fast paced. I was worried that it was going to be more of like a political thing. I was like, well, so they're figuring everything out after the events of, taking down the Death Star and trying to set up a new republic and all this stuff. There's going to be a lot of like political maneuverings and a lot of kind of like time spent in like essentially boardrooms and stuff. And so that was kind of what I was worried about, was that we would get bogged down a lot in like long-winded discussions about what to do with the universe.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So that was definitely a fear of mine, but there was certainly political maneuverings, but I think it was done in such a way that it felt fast-paced, it felt clippy, it felt punchy. It felt like everything moved along and we weren't bogged down in one place for too long of a period at a time. And then the other thing I thought was really interesting was I think a lot of modern fantasy and modern sci-fi has this tendency to, when you have a book that has multiple POVs for like each chapter, there's a tendency to like give certain characters really long chapters, and then there's like a side character who just gets like a little short chapter, and then you get a really long chapter with another character that you may not care about.
Right.
It just so happens that I liked every single character that had a POV in this book.
Right.
But I was thankful that if I hadn't, like if for some reason I hadn't enjoyed Leia's chapter or something, they were all pretty much the same length and they never overstayed their welcome.
That's cool.
I never felt like anyone's chapter was too short. I never felt like it was too long. Like I never felt like, oh, I didn't get enough time like with that character in that chapter, in that scenario that they were in. I always felt like it was just a perfect amount of time, and we moved on to the next thing, and it was great. It was awesome.
And that's like so Star Wars. Yeah. Because like when you watch the movies, almost all of them, it's that's like true, you got this story going here, you have this story going here, and you have this story going here. Like I think all 6 films, it's literally there's like a duel happening over here,
Yeah.
there's a space battle happening over here, and
Yep.
then there's an on-ground battle happening over here, and that because those are all different points of view
Yeah.
leading to those things. That's cool. That's really cool how the author like
Captured that.
because he's probably thinking, well, this is how Star Wars works. This is how George Lucas
Yep.
portrayed everything.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's super cool.
Yeah. In between chapters, I could just like envision like the diagonal swipe or
Yeah.
whatever they would always have in the
Yeah.
movies in between, like switching scenes, like in this new scene. And then I guess lastly is my final general thought. I loved Thrawn as a villain. I went into this and I was like, how can anyone take Darth Vader's place?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
how could it be done? And we still haven't seen like a ton of Thrawn because we're just like one book in, but I'm like, oh man, this guy is cold and calculated and a little
Methodical.
bit
Yeah.
charismatic. Like he can be like really, really nice to somebody, but he's doing it in like a manipulative way to get his own way. And I'm like, man, and there was not everything, obviously, it's not all like one to one, but there were certain parts of his character that reminded me a little bit of Rezkin from King's
Yeah,
Dark Tidings,
I could see that.
where he was just like he was able to change his personality on a dime. Like he could go from like cold and calculating to like when he was dealing with a certain underling or whatever, he would act like very like noble and like courteous and whatever, but he's doing that to gain like whatever he needs from that person. That's like the face that he's putting on. And then there were other characters that he talked to that where he was just like, kill him, and he's just like completely like dead and cold inside. I thought, and he was a brilliant like tactician. Like everything, one of the first space fights that he's in, I think it might even be one of the first couple chapters.
Oh yes, that was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like turn the ship this way, and he gives them some other order, and one of his like underlings is like, wait, like, sir, like, not to be rude, but like, why would we do that? Because if we're facing that way, like, it's not going to work the right way. He's like, just watch what happens. Just watch what happens. And the other ship, I wish I could remember exactly what like the play-by-play was, but the ship understood them to be doing something other than what they were doing, which happened to get them in the correct position to just obliterate them when they eventually like came around or whatever. I forget exactly what it was, but he did that by not being like, oh, this is where I need to place my ship in order to get this shot. He understood the enemy to the point where he was like, this is how this specific people will think about this maneuver that I'm doing. And dude, that moment, I was just like, dude, that was so cool. Like I love characters like that think and plan ahead and like know things about the person they're facing that inevitably gets them the win. I thought Thrawn was awesome.
He's a cool character. I like that he is so strategic. And I like the comment or the part where he talks about like art and how like, art tells you about a culture and it teaches you stuff. And there was like one part where he was showing Pelion a piece of art. He was like, this art didn't tell me anything, and I failed at this, and I destroyed the whole planet or something like that. And it was like, that's really cool. The art thing, because that's so real in real life too. Just like art communicates culture from like ancient to now, and I think that's cool. And another thing that's kind of cool about Thrawn and that makes him special, I feel like, in the context of the Empire, is that he's the only alien that holds an office. So there's like a race thing to that. So I don't think they said it in the book. And I don't know if it comes in the books later, but I know from somewhere that he's a Chiss. That's what they're called. I'm not sure if I'm remembering things from where.
Sure.
But I think the Chiss are people from like either that super far outer rim of the galaxy so they're not like a normal
so he would have had to
like see in
And
Yeah.
he would have had to like fight his way up to get rank like that,
Right.
Coming from a nowhere nobody place.
Right.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
It really demonstrates that. Like I can't remember but I've heard that there's a reason why the Emperor had humans be the leaders in the Empire, because there was like a prejudice or something against aliens and stuff. And so it really demonstrates Thrawn's like skill and like what he has that's valuable, that brought him to such a high leadership position. And it's just terrifying too. Red eyes, dude.
Yeah, right.
Cool. Terrifying. And because he's so controlled in the way he speaks and just direct, you just start. He's the guy that if you saw him get in the elevator, you'd be like, I'll wait for the next one.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, it's funny when I started the book, I don't know if I missed like a description early on or what, but I pictured him as having like, I don't know, like black, like swept back hair kind of thing, and like very like tall and strong and whatnot, and kind of in like a almost like Darth Vader-esque like outfit kind of thing, just with like without the helmet. Because it mentions something about a tube, and I'm not sure.
Oh, really?
He had a tube somewhere on him, and I'm not sure what that was like exactly referring to. But I must have missed a description early on, because later on then they said blue skin, and I'm like, wait, what? And so I went to like Google Images, and I Googled Thrawn, and I was like, oh, that's what he looks like. I'm like, that's not anything like what I thought he looked like. But yeah, he's definitely terrifying for sure.
In the live action,
I've heard people are not happy with his live action look.
He looks a little odd. I've heard multiple people say that he looks like just blue,
like a Walmart
blue
Walmart Thrawn.
Walmart Thrawn. No, a blue Elon Musk.
Oh, that's so true.
Yep, I could totally see that.
That's so true.
No, I think he's perfect though. He looks a little weird, a little funky.
Yeah,
but I think he's perfect in live action.
How he appears in Ahsoka, does it like line up at all with this, or is it very different?
It's pretty different.
Okay.
The art thing is still true, and the character is still true. It's just a whole different story,
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like the ship is still called the Chimera.
Oh, okay.
And Pelion is a character, but you haven't seen him with Thrawn yet.
Okay.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Gabe, any thoughts on Thrawn before we go into our like piece by piece thing here?
No, yeah, we covered all. My thing was after I heard Isaac confirm that he did come from, well, if he's correct, from the Outer Rim, I could just tell that, the way that he speaks and like being a tactician, that like he came from the bottom and earned his spot,
right?
Which is scary.
Yeah. Yeah, people are like terrified of him for a reason, for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess so as we go into like kind of like piece by piece, like our favorite moments and whatnot, we've talked about Thrawn here enough, and that's kind of my first note there, I guess. So we're seeing Leia here, and she's able to pick up on Luke's mood, and then of course later we see Luke start to train her like as a Jedi with this little like machine thing that like zaps her. And I'm wondering, is this something that I'm misremembering, or was she confirmed to have Jedi powers in the original trilogy?
That's also a question that I had as well, because I could not remember if she did. I also don't remember how she got twins. Like I knew she was got pregnant at some point, but I'm like, I thought it was only one kid.
Right. Yeah. I think it's only just insinuated because she is Luke's sister, that she would be force sensitive.
Yeah.
And Yoda says, there is another. And I think he wasn't just referring to, like, he wouldn't have said that if he was referring to, you just have another sibling It wasn't necessarily that. It was there's another person that's force sensitive and that could also become a Jedi. And if you fail, she could do it. Kind of thing.
Gotcha.
So in that like little phrase, that little moment when Yoda's dying, and he's like, "There's another." I think that's what that insinuated.
Gotcha.
What was the other thing you said about
her
having kids?
Her pregnancy.
I don't think it talks about them getting pregnant in the movies at all.
Does it? Okay.
No, and but I was bummed that in 7, 8, 9 that Kylo
was an
only child.
Yeah.
There's so much like comics.
Rey could have been the other twin. Like...
I wish she was so badly. There's so much content that was like, man, the lineage of the Skywalkers would leave so many stories to be told, but they chose to have one kid. I don't know. Kylo was cool. I liked him more when he had a shirt on and the helmet. But
that's true. When he had a shirt.
But yeah, it would have been cooler if they were siblings. And I have lots of opinions about those movies. I'll not share them now, I guess.
Fair. Okay, so we see that she's like force sensitive and that she's able to kind of pick up on these things. I feel like I had another question about her connection to the original movies, but I can't remember what it is.
It'll come back to you.
Well, it's interesting that she's still like they're in the context of war during the original movies. So they're really active and they're just rebels. So they're pretty like just call the shots. Let's do it. While they're forming a government. They're forming the New Republic. And it's interesting to remember, she was a senator or she was a senator's daughter. And now she's a senator. And now she has to like political
do these diplomatic
duties, things that she has to do now and kind of go by rules now.
Right.
Which is interesting because I think of Leia and I think of this gal that's like, I can do whatever because the cost is freedom or whatever. We're fighting, we're fighting the Empire.
Right.
But now she's like, I gotta like establish order. I have to like be culturally aware and how to communicate with. I thought it was interesting how her attitude when they go to Bimasari, the fuzzy people, and they get attacked by the people. Luke is in the art room or whatever. How aware she was as like, I'm a diplomat going to speak to a different people group. Right. That's interesting because that's not really how I thought of Leia, but it totally makes sense. Yeah.
It is interesting though to see her, not only her, but just like everything. It's like, okay, well, after you kill like the reigning, like the people that rule over everything, like the Empire, that the people that make the rules, and you take that whole like government down, it's like, now what? It's like, now we have to like make one and figure it out.
That's weird.
I remember what I was gonna ask. Do we know why? Did we ever find out why Luke was all moody at the beginning of the book? And like,
I don't know.
And Leia was like, he's upset about something, but I don't know what it is. And I'm like, well, I don't know either. So I would love to find out. And then we don't. I felt like
I think he's moody because he like starts with the Force dream or whatever.
Yeah, the dream is what I thought.
Ben Kenobi, Obi-Wan says, I'm no longer going to communicate to you. Like our connection's getting separated.
Yep.
And then I also feel like there's this like weird pressure on him too, that he's like gotta train more Jedi. Right. He's not the last Jedi, but he's like the first new Jedi. So I think maybe that's kind of what he was trying to get at, is that he was feeling all that pressure,
right?
Doing it by himself and stuff.
That exactly was my initial question. Was the one that I forgot like several minutes ago. Was, so am I correct in remembering that Luke is the last Jedi because of, was it the Order 66 or whatever? Did all the other Jedis die?
Right. Well, this book had no awareness of Order 66, right?
Oh,
So
yeah,
right now
okay.
the reader is thinking Luke is literally the only Jedi. But
Does it explain why though, or did the movies?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so.
Huh.
That'd be interesting. Yeah, but technically in canon lore now, um Luke is not the only Jedi.
Right, because there's
There's
Mara.
well, yeah, and now you have Ezra from Rebels and Kanan. He died, but
Oh, you mean in like the Disney
yeah,
Plus catalog?
in the Disney canon now,
Oh,
like
okay.
there's plenty like Cal Kestis now.
Right.
He exists at the same time.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's others in the comics, even like Legends comics. There were like Jedi that were just no longer Jedi. They just
Right.
were like
Yeah.
Okay.
keepers of the peace on the planet they landed on, or
Right.
something.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, we kind of just talked about it, but Luke is largely on his own. He's having to figure out, oh, I love this about the book. Anytime that Luke was like doing something and he was like either using his force powers a certain way to like influence somebody or like trying to figure out like, what he should do, he kept wondering, like, is this part of what being a Jedi is? Like, because he doesn't have like Obi-Wan or Yoda to like guide him and tell him like, no, you're veering towards the dark side or anything. He's trying to like figure out, like, there's a part later on in the book where he's like lightly influencing someone's mind to like let him pass or something like that. It was
They were coming into Lando's planet, and I think he like uses the force to convince the TIE fighters or whatever to avoid them or something.
Exactly.
If I'm remembering that right.
And he was like, is that something a Jedi would do, or should I not have done that? And so I love, dude, my favorite kind of character is a super conflicted character. And I just love that he's like, I don't know if I should have done that. Like, maybe that was something a Jedi would do, but maybe it also like wasn't.
Right.
And I don't know. I thought that was so cool. I love that so much.
Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting because he's like, if you think of Luke in the original trilogy, he's pretty impulsive. Like he's depicted as impulsive. I feel like his decision to go save his friends instead of complete his training in Empire Strikes Back was supposed to demonstrate how he just does stuff.
Right.
And so it's interesting now he's like trying to take on responsibility. He's trying to be slow to consider and think and stuff like that. Like he's literally maturing.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, so then we get Mara Jade, and this is a character that I've heard about nonstop on the internet. People, it seems like the Star Wars community loves Mara Jade, and they're so upset that she is not in the Disney Plus catalog. I knew before going into this book that she, well, do you mind if I spoil this for you, Gabe?
Yeah, no, you're good.
Okay. So it's widely known that Mara Jade becomes Luke's like wife later on.
Yeah.
And that he's married to her for a time. I don't know anything beyond that. I know that they end up separating at some point. I don't know why. But I do know that at some point she becomes his wife. And so I was thinking in this book, I was like, is this where Mara Jade comes from? I couldn't remember like where exactly in the extended universe she comes into play. And I was so happy to like see her in here because I've heard so much about this character, but I don't I've never like read about her or seen her in anything. And so as soon as she was on screen, I was like, it's Mara Jade. Yeah. So that was cool. Do you have any thoughts on Mara, Gabe? Did you like this character?
Yeah, no, I liked the character a lot, and I liked the relationship that her and Luke had in the beginning, just pure vehemence.
Yeah.
Was very interesting, and to see that kind of, slowly change was really cool too.
Yeah, it's interesting because by the time we get to the end of the book, she's like, we're not at a point where she's like in love with Luke or anything.
No,
I wouldn't
but she's
even
not
say
actively trying to kill him,
Right. Yeah.
Baby steps.
Yeah. And they've kind of traded you know, in Dresden Files, there's a saying that Harry says later on in the series where he's like, I think it's Billy the werewolf, and he's like, "Oh, you saved my life, man," and Harry's like, "You saved my life like a week ago. After you make that trade once, like you don't like keep counting." And I feel like that's kind of what happened with Mara and Luke. Like there was so many times where they like, even though she was like super antagonistic towards him, there was times where like she saved him with like a blaster fire, or like he saved her in like some other way. And it's like they've made the life trade now. Like they've made the trade where like they've saved each other at some point.
It's a blood debt.
Yeah.
Blood debt.
And so hopefully yeah, I'm excited to see where that goes, because I'm so interested to see how they go from where they are now, which is still like a little bit antagonistic, to like where they eventually get to. I'm like, how does he end up marrying her? Like, I don't know.
Like she still wants to kill him by the end of the book, right?
Yeah,
like they don't.
Yeah.
The only thing they came out with was
she's like, you can go for now,
right?
But like, I will eventually find you, kind of thing.
Yeah. I thought Mara was a person I was never going to learn about, because I've heard lots of people say, "Oh, Mara's so cool," and I'm like, where do you learn about her?
Right.
Like, and so when I started reading this and they said the name, I was like, oh, cool. I don't know if this is the first mention of her. Maybe it is. I think probably is.
I think it is. Yeah.
And so it'll be cool to kind of learn of the character myself instead of just hearing all these things about her. Yeah. It'll be cool to learn about her.
And we learned that she was the well, first she tells Luke that she was a dancer in Jabba's palace.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's a cool connection. And then Luke, because he's smarter than I am, he's like, that's not really what you were. And then there's me like, wait, what? That's not what she was? And he's like, you were like something else. And so then she's like, yeah, it was the hand of the Emperor. And I was like, oh.
Yeah. And it's cool, like what's that called, like misdirection or whatever, making like him at Zahn using that to be like, you're gonna think that she worked for Jabba, but then in the last chapter when she's like, fine, I'll tell you, she's tied to the Emperor. And it was like, oh, didn't see that coming. I thought you were like a bounty hunter or like something like that.
I definitely thought if it was anything, it was just going to be that she was like a mercenary or something, and that because of Luke taking down the Empire, it messed up like her business or something. But with her being so closely related to the Empire, it's like, I don't know, part of me is kind of like, but you can find a new job. Like why? Like I don't, like I understand that you're upset, but it's like, I don't know, it's not like the end of the world, I guess.
There's lots of opportunities in the
there's
galaxy.
there's a whole galaxy out there. Is there anything else that you guys really liked from this book, or any specific things or themes, or just whatever?
Let's talk about the Jedi that
that's what I was just thinking.
Okay.
I forget his name. It was a long name.
Start with an S.
Joris Sabayoth.
Okay,
sounds right.
Yeah,
I don't know how the audio pronounced
no,
it.
That sounded exactly right.
Sabayoth.
So that was kind of a surprise in and of itself. And they go down to whatever that planet is, and he is, Thrawn's looking for the guardian of the mountain or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And here comes this old geezer come out and is talking to him, blah blah blah, and then reveals that he killed the guardian and is now the guardian. But he's using like lightning, right? Like evil magic, or the Force, whatever you want to call it. And and so I was like, but he keeps referring to himself as a Jedi, and so I was like, man, I don't know if he's probably just drunk on power, I guess, like kind of what it feels like. But I thought that was just kind of a cool, another pawn to put down, I guess, for Thrawn.
I think something that might also help in understanding that character is, I don't think the word Sith
has been invented yet.
came out yet.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
bad guy Force users were
Mhm.
just dark Jedi,
Dark
maybe.
Jedi.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So like
Okay.
he's still probably equivalent with someone you would have run into like Darth Vader or Emperor
Gotcha.
Palpatine.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, he's just a dark side Jedi. You know?
Gotcha.
Okay.
Gotcha.
That's good
And
to know.
he wants like Luke and Leia so bad.
Yeah, he's crazy. He seems
Yeah,
super
he's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. He does seem crazy.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that I was so focused on Thrawn that I didn't pay a whole lot of it. I didn't pay as much attention to that character as I
Yeah.
should have. So I think the whole time I was like, well, like, so is he just like a Jedi that is being like threatened by Thrawn and has to work for him because he like doesn't have any other option, or does he actually want to? Because at one point he sends a message to Luke, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like Force telepathy.
Yeah, and he's like we could like raise the Jedi again. And that message made me think like, okay, so is he trying to like secretly send this message to Luke saying like, hey, there's more of us out here?
Well-
But from what you guys are saying, it sounds like he's fully on the dark side.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's what I would say. But his only thing with helping Thrawn, because he was gonna kill Thrawn, obviously he couldn't because of those creatures, but he
Oh
was gonna
yeah,
kill him, and
those
then
are
when
cool.
yeah, those are really cool. And then when Thrawn was like, you know, I know where two Jedi are. And he was
Right.
just like instantly like that was all he cared about. Like you give me those Jedi, I'll do anything, whatever you want.
Yeah.
And I think, like you said, you know, he wanted to bring them to the dark side to kind of start his own little
Yeah,
militia of Jedi or whatever you want to call it.
yeah.
Right.
The thing about the dark side is the dark side user like hungers for power.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to hear him define power, because Thrawn was like, I could give you power by having like imperial status or something like that. And he's like, that's not power.
Yeah.
Power is control over people. And like,
Yeah.
so to him, I think that's kind of his inspiration is like, I'll work with you guys, help you out with it's cool. The technique that they're using, that they're trying to describe as battle meditation. So like
Yeah.
that's what Thrawn and Pelion were like arguing about. Is Thrawn was like, the Emperor died and we lost the Battle of Endor because the Emperor was using like a technique like through the Force to help give the troops an edge against them. And when he died, they lost it, and then they lost the battle. And so, and there's another reference in the comics, the Republic comics, on the Jedi Council, in the prequel era. There's he's in the first movie, and he's just sitting in the background. You don't actually talk to him or anything in the movie. Rancisi or something like that. I don't know. He's a weird snake looking guy with a big beard and a tiny little face. And in the comics, he's also using like battle meditation to help the Republic beat the separatists or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. So that's like, Pellion's like, we don't need a guy to meditate to beat stuff. And Thrawn's like, yeah, we do.
Yeah, we do. It could change.
But Thrawn also understands we don't have this guy on a leash. He could leave at any moment.
Yep.
So we need incentive.
Yeah.
We need to keep him around. We got to
For
promise him we'll get him more Jedi to mind control or turn into his Padawans or whatever.
Right.
Sweet.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes way more sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, dude, when Luke was going back to Dagobah, I was like, oh, that's awesome. Because that's where Yoda was. That's where he first met Yoda, right? Like, so yeah, when
and that's when, and that was part of that, because I know that Luke had a dream at some point too about the cave that, right, that Yoda, you know, kind of directed him to.
Yeah.
He faced the, you know, the Force apparition or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Right. And that was interesting going in too. He said that he felt like Yoda's spirit was like guiding his like instruments on his ship. Like
the first time or in this time?
This time in this.
Oh yeah. Huh.
When he was going in there, he mentioned like that, like I forget exactly what the instrument on his ship was, but he felt like either like some sort of signal was like pushing him one way, or like his radar or something.
That's cool. Yeah.
And he's like, I think that might be like Yoda's spirit like moving me towards that direction. And sure enough, he landed right at the cave and like the craggy tree and everything. And that's where he found like that key thing.
Yep.
The beck and call.
The beck and call. I'm so excited to see
That's
that
cool.
used like in like
That's
actually
cool.
on screen.
Yeah.
Where he can use it and his X-wing just like comes down. I'm like, man, that is some that's like some Starfield, No Man's Sky kind of stuff.
Did it explain what it went to?
Like it was the bad Jedi that was out there. That was the apparition. It was part of like his whole ensemble.
His ship or something.
Yeah.
Yep.
Huh. Interesting. That'd be cool to see if his ship was still around or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, call his ship.
Yeah, and it was like something super epic.
Yeah, that'd be
sick. Be sweet.
I love the whole like aesthetic of like the X-wings and the TIE fighters. Like they're just such a cool design. I don't know.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah, it's so lived in, you know. It's like,
yeah,
I think that's what sets Star Wars apart from, well, one of the things that sets Star Wars apart from like a regular sci-fi.
Yeah,
because it's not really sci-fi. It's more like space western.
Yeah, it's not like super sleek and shiny and like space age like how we think of it now. It's like it almost looks like if the 80s were a sci-fi. Like like all of the craft are very like boxy and angled, and like the X-wing, the X-wing, man, if that isn't like one of the coolest designs just in all of sci-fi, I don't know what is. It reminds me so much of No Man's Sky, because you kind of start out in that game, you kind of start out with an X-wing. That's kind of like what your ship looks like when you start the game.
Oh, cool.
And so I'm like, man, so many people have taken inspiration from that.
Oh yeah.
And even with Starfield, like playing Starfield right now, I'm so deep into Starfield. And
that's the new game that came out.
Yeah, that's the new from the people that made like Skyrim and Fallout and stuff.
I heard
like
people
that.
are like modding it too, and the mods make it feel even more like Star Wars.
Dude, there's a lot of really cool mods that I definitely want to get once I do like a full like vanilla playthrough. But yeah, that game feels so much like Star Wars, just in the way where it's like there are some like cities and stuff that are ultra futuristic and are really like sleek and shiny, like New Atlantis. But then you go to like Aquila City, and it's like that is straight out of it's like Tatooine or something.
Cool.
Like it's awesome.
That's cool.
And all the ships look very Star Wars, like very much like Millennium Falcon and X-wing and that kind of stuff. So okay. Oh, so this is another interesting thing, and this has got to be something that's been just added for this book, or like I just mean like outside of the movies and stuff, is that his ship has kind of fused with R2-D2.
Yeah,
and it kind of has a mind of its own. Were you picking up on this?
Cool.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. He has such a deeper connection to his ship than anybody else does, but with the negative point that it's really hard to work on, because it's not like a stock ship that they know how to like work with, but instead it's like fused with this droid that has a personality of its own.
Yeah, and that's what he said. R2-D2 has to guide most of the mechanics.
Right.
Tell them what's going on.
And was this it? Did it make a comment about its speed too? Like that made it faster?
Yeah.
Like,
even Mara was like,
that's cool.
She's like, yeah, you're probably 30% into, I forget what she used like a very specific word. I can't remember what it was, but she was like, oh yeah, that's like 30% more like effective, essentially.
It's like the X-wing is like wine. Like it gets better with,
with
time.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's a cool idea.
Oh, we get a vision. So when he's in Dagobah, we get this vision of him jumping into the Snarlack pit.
Sarlacc.
What?
No N.
Sarlacc.
Sarlacc?
Sarlacc.
Dude, I've always called it a Snarlack.
Really?
Yeah.
Snorlax.
Yeah.
Is it not?
You can call it Snarlack as
No
long as there's
way.
a silent G in there. So it's like Narlack, like Snarlack. That's so gnar.
So
Oh my
gnar,
gosh.
dude.
I've
No,
always thought
yeah.
it was a Snarlack.
That's
too.
funny.
But yeah, we get a vision of him, and we find out later that this is like an alternate past that he's
Yeah.
glimpsing. And we also find out that it's what if Mara had been allowed to be at the execution?
Yeah.
Like, cause she begged Jabba to let her be there to like see him die.
Yeah.
And if she had been there as he like tried to call his lightsaber, she would have pulled it back and been like,
Oh,
bye.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh man, that was brutal.
Yeah.
So
I wonder if there's any edits of like Jabba's palace or anything where that people put Mara in
where you could see
the background or something, or
that'd be interesting. I would like
yeah,
to look that
and
up.
all like a fan film
Yeah,
or
like a
something. That'd be
fan
kind of
edit.
cool.
That'd be cool.
Jabba's palace through her eyes.
Yeah. Flying into Nomad City with
Yep.
Lando's whole outpost that he's built.
Yeah,
I was
mining
like, what
operation.
has Lando been up to?
For
What is
real.
going
Yeah.
on?
Yep.
Yeah, so cool.
He's built like a whole thriving city out
Right.
here. And in my notes here I have that as they're flying into Nomad City, the Star Wars theme starts playing, and it's just like da, na, 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 na.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
like, oh my god, it feels so good every
Oh,
time the
that's so
music
cool.
would come in. It was so nostalgic. It just felt fantastic.
That's funny. It reminds me, him as a business guy reminds me of like real business people where like they look at a small town where there's not a lot going on and they're like, this is awesome opportunity for
perfect.
business.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
all these empty storefronts or whatever, I'll buy them up or whatever. And he's just like, Cloud City is just like, it's just clouds. It's nothing there. And he builds a paradise. And now like this, I don't remember the name of the planet. It also started with a B or something with a weird pronunciation, but it starts Nomad City in the middle of nowhere where you have to use the disc to guide you to protect you from the sun.
Shield generators.
No one wants to go to a planet where you have to do that. Like no one wants to go out to the middle of nowhere to start a business, but he's like, this is ripe for money right here.
Yeah, for sure. And then okay, so I have a quote from Thrawn down here. And I love this whole monologue where Thrawn was like, somebody had messed up and it was one of his underlings, and he's like, do you know the difference between an error and a mistake? And I love this whole speech. Basically it boiled down to, I forget which is which, but one of them, I think it's that a mistake can be rectified. A mistake can be, like you can learn from a mistake and figure out your like how to do it better next time. But like an error, that is just something that, that was like careless almost, like that. It like he sees it as like you don't care enough to do this correctly if you're making an error. And it might be the other way around. It might be that like an error you can learn from or something, and that a mistake you can't or something.
Yeah, and that's when Luke escapes their tractor beam.
Yeah.
And he kills the guy, right?
Right.
Is that when that happens?
Yeah, he kills him right there. He has, does he have like a big alien or something?
He has the Nogri come kill.
Oh, the Nogri. Okay,
yeah.
Rook, yeah.
Yeah, which is like, isn't that a chess word?
A rook, yeah.
Rook is, yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool.
What did you think about Luke and Luke getting captured by Mara and Card?
I thought it was weird. I think Talon Card is such an interesting character too.
He's so good. He's probably one of my favorites.
He's cool. The image in my mind keeps coming to me as of Ra's al Ghul from Batman.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what he looks like in my head to me. Yeah. And it's interesting because he's not so obsessed with wealth as much as it's information and knowledge, and like he's kind of lofty too. Like he's almost the smuggler equivalent kind of to Thrawn. Thrawn's really strategic, and
Yep.
Card's also like he's standing in the middle of the chess game. It's like he got invited to the game that he wasn't really supposed to be playing, but he's like just there. Somehow he made chess into a 3-player game, and he's like trying to stay neutral. But I think he's a cool character, and it's cool to think of the world or the universe as Jabba the Hutt was like part of this huge gang, and in his death, which if you're just watching the movie, you think, the bad guy, this guy that has a place, he died. But really, in the scheme of things, his organization was so broad that his absence left like a power hole in the underworld. And so Talon Card kind of stepping into that as like a new leader. That's a really cool idea to me. Is like, the guy that was nobody's now like, all right, now's my time. I'm gonna play my cards right. And now he's a huge influence. And his fascination just with Mara too. He's like, it's crazy that they work together and have such a close relationship, and he doesn't even get her. He doesn't understand her.
Right.
And so the fact that they stumble on to Luke was like, oh, okay. And maybe I can't remember if it was like in the book communicated like this, but like, was it Luke's attempt to reach out in the Force and ask for help, and it like contacted Mara or something? Ooh. That's because they're saying, he said Card was like, Mara's the one that found you. I wasn't looking for you.
Right.
And so
he's like, we declined the offer,
right.
Or we declined like the hunt. But then Mara was like, I got him. And
Mara went off on her own, right? Like without even his knowledge of her going to get Luke. Or
no, I think their whole
I think she guided him there.
Barge just showed up there or something.
Gotcha.
And it's crazy too, the Salamiri, the little salamander tree guys. How
suppress the Jedi power.
It's crazy that Luke gets picked up by them, and he senses the ship and he thinks that no one's on it.
That's right.
And he gets on, and it was kind of cool to be like, wow, Luke is experiencing blindness. Like he doesn't, and he gets passed out, and he wakes up in the room, and Mara's there. He hears her voice, and he's like, where is she? And then he's like, you're right there. And he's like realizing, I don't know what's happening. You just cut out my sixth sense, like.
I forgot about that.
That was cool.
I forgot that when the ship showed up, he wasn't sure if anybody was on it because he couldn't sense them. And I remember when that was happening, I'm like, I wonder if it's like a droid captained ship or something. He's just not able to sense like the humanity in them or anything. But yeah, man, that was such a great scene. Like the whole scene of him being stuck out in space. If anybody's seen Gravity, the movie Gravity, dude, that movie is absolutely terrifying. If you don't know,
you've told me to watch it before, but I cannot remember for the life of me if I did. I feel like I may have.
What's that about?
You first of all, you should absolutely watch it. Watch it on the biggest screen that you have. Watch it with the best sound system that you have, because you absolutely need both of those things to like truly enjoy it. I saw it in 3D in the movie theater, and it like blew my mind. Basically what happens is, I forget like what the build up to it is, but this woman is out in space, and she is like disconnected from all of her fellow astronauts or anything. And she's the last person left in this little tiny rocket that like split off from the big rocket.
Wow.
And she's just like floating out in space.
Wow.
And she has no, like, it's not sci-fi, like it's set in like nowadays. And so it's like, she has no way to contact Earth, really. She has no way to get help or anything. She's just in space until she dies.
Yeah.
And it's you watching her go through like the 5 stages of grief.
Yeah.
And and just like
That's
just
cool.
kind of like dealing with the reality that there is no way out of this. Like you're
Wow.
just in space. Sorry.
Yeah. I
Like-
mean, Luke was left stranded.
Yeah.
That's such a claustrophobic feeling. It's
Yeah.
like being stranded out in the ocean, like
Mm-hmm.
on your little
On a
like
little-
life of
yep.
Pi or whatever.
Dude, I've
Yep.
thought about that so much. I've never seen Life of Pi, but
I actually haven't either, but
I've often thought about that. Like, dude, what if you were just like in the middle of the ocean, just like on something, like even if it's a small boat, like you're just
Yeah.
stuck there.
Oh, yeah.
You're screwed.
yeah, it sounds so hopeless.
But yeah, anyway, I love that whole scene of him in his X-wing and R2's just out there like burp, 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 burp. And he's like, oh, we're stuck in space. We're gonna see what happens. And then suddenly like this thing comes by and you think everything is gonna be okay. And there was a certain point where I was like, I wonder if this is Mara and Talon Card. But yeah, it was a good scene. I liked it.
I do think that one thing that was a little, I don't want to say corny, because again, this is a reverenced book.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it was like, man, everything was just so convenient for all the characters to just keep
for
showing up. And
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
without a
It
doubt.
was just like, they're in a universe far, far away, and you just want that universe to be huge.
Yeah.
Right.
So the fact that
Yeah.
they keep running into each other is like, all right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Sake of the story.
Yeah.
Sure.
That is very fair. I think that's kind of like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's kind of like what Star Wars has always been, though. Like there's always been some sense of like plot convenience and like certain things happening like just the way they need to happen for Anakin to win the pod racer race or whatever and stuff like that.
And I think the like scapegoat answer, I guess, is that it's the Force. The Force is the one that's like
kind of guides everything.
We didn't get shot by all of the stormtroopers because the Force protected us.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
like
yeah, that is kind of a big Deus Ex Machina when it comes to
Did you just swear?
What?
What did you just say? I don't know what you said. What does that mean?
Deus Ex Machina basically.
Stop. No, I don't. Okay, yeah. What does it mean? I won't interrupt you.
It basically just means like a plot convenience that like it's like, oh, of course the magical artifact works exactly this way, which gets them out of the exact situation they find themselves in. That kind of thing.
Sometimes I wonder if authors literally just write themselves into a hole. They don't even actually know what's gonna happen.
Yeah. They're like, we need the magic sword to do this thing now.
Yeah.
Okay.
What is that word?
Deus.
Dude,
Ex
don't
Machina.
say it. Deus Ex Machina. I'm sorry, Mom. I did just say that. Just kidding. She wouldn't think that's bad. I think. I don't know.
All right. So we got is there anything that you guys have? I don't want to take up all the breathing room here.
No, you're good. My next thing was gonna be to say exactly that. Like when, Luke is taken by Mara, and then all of a sudden Han and everybody just kind of shows up right where they need to be. Not a bad thing, like you said, convenience to the story, but I totally agree with what Isaac said.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely a convenience that brings them to Card's location, but it did make for a great scene where it's like Luke is in a storage shed and Han and Lando show up, and it's like they're getting the VIP treatment. They're having dinner with Talon, and then all of a sudden Talon's like, oh, hang on, I gotta take this call real quick. And he like steps out and he's like, oh, Thrawn is on his way to my compound.
Right.
And I have the most important person that he's looking for in my storage shed. And I have Han and Lando at my dinner table, which certainly can't help the situation.
Right.
And so it's just like, I loved the mess that it was, and how Talon was just like, okay, everybody out. Like, Thrawn is coming. He's like, I have to deal with Thrawn, and then we can figure this all out. And then of course, like, Han figuring out that Skywalker was there, and just like, hey, so like, how do you explain this? And Talon's like, okay, you can have Skywalker, like, let's just like be friendly here.
Yeah.
I loved it. I love that whole like series of events, like, as it unfolded. It was almost like comical in the way that it was all happening.
Right.
Where it was just like, can anything go more sideways? Like,
yeah, I enjoyed that for sure.
Yeah. And like Mara and Luke out in the jungle, and whatnot.
That was cool.
That was so much fun. Where it's like, he's trying to get away on a ship, and she's like, "I'm gonna get you," and she like brings their ship and just like shoots him down, and he's like, "Well, now we're both on the ground, so what now?" And she's like, "I guess we'll have to like machete our way through this forest." And and just kind of like making their way through, and then eventually like bluffing their way into the Imperials. But everything along the way, it's so hard to describe, because I wouldn't say that they had like a whole arc where, oh yeah, they like went through this tough time together, and by that they became closer. It's like there was the seed of that planted, for sure.
Right.
Like, I could see now how she would eventually like come around on Luke, I think. But she still like does not like Luke. And I don't know. I felt like the author did such a good job of describing the tension and the indecisiveness of Mara, where Luke is like, you don't need to hate me. Like, I don't hate you. Like we could be friends if you wanted to. But she's just like, she's seeing like the way that he's treating her in like this overall pleasant way. And she's like, I don't want him to be treating me that way. And like, kind of like struggling with that.
Right.
And I thought Timothy Zahn did a really good job, just kind of like portraying all that, I guess.
I thought all those events were so great. I think the first time when I tried to read the book, I stopped right when they were doing the chase over the trees. And so picking it back up and then reading all the way up to that and then continuing on, it was like, whoa, Han and Lando are there. And it was like learning about Thrawn showing up, and then hearing about their events in the forest, and like protecting each other from the Vornskurs, the wolf rat creature things. I thought that was so cool to like read that. Every time it happened, I was like, oh wow, it happened again. And it was kind of like, it happened like 3 times, I think. And they did, I think they like give you the feeling that it happens even more than that than they describe.
Right.
And for some reason, every time it happened, I was like, it happened again. Like, it caught me off guard. And yeah. And then I had another thought. You said earlier that you liked the pacing of the chapters, and that it didn't like, stuff didn't hang out too long. The one thing that I did kind of wish that maybe got more coverage or was spaced a little more or something, just you read this, you're getting further into it, and then you remember, oh yeah, Leia's still on Kashyyyk. She's still over there. Like, I kind of forgot about her part of the story. She went with with Chewbacca to their planet. And then it seemed like she was going to chill out. She's paranoid. She thought she saw one of the Nogri or whatever, but they stay on guard. And then you kind of leave her for like multiple chapters. And you forget about her.
So this is where I got very confused. And I think I mentioned this at the top of the episode, where I was like, you guys might have to explain the whole Leia thing to me, because exactly that. The last thing I remembered was that she had seen this Nogri, and I can't even remember what the Nogri said to her. But basically wasn't it like not a threat, or was it kind of on her side, or because she ended up interrogating it, right?
Right. So she saw the Nogri, and then they spent like the Wookiees created a search party and then gave
then
her
found it.
like personal bodyguards, including Chewbacca and Chewbacca's old friend Ralra. That was the sad part to me. That was probably the saddest. That's the part that made me feel the most, maybe, was when I found out that Ralra, Chewbacca's like childhood friend, and Wookiees live a really long time too. So their
Okay.
relationship's like a long time. And you find out that Ralra died like fighting the Nogri off,
Okay, yeah.
so that Leia could just stay alive.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, Chewbacca's childhood friend just surrendered his life to a human.
Wow.
And like also, I think it talks about it, how Wookiees were enslaved by humans.
Yeah.
And so Wookiees have like a prejudice against humans too. So the fact that they're even going
having her there,
all this effort to take care of her, let alone Chewbacca's best friend, childhood best friend, dies for her. And it's just like, that made me sad. And then to find out, it was kind of, this was another thing that when I didn't finish the book, I was like, oh, these Nogri are just, I thought they were just annoying.
Yeah.
And then it got deeper when they keep the captive alive, and they go to talk to him, and he says, I smelled you or whatever, and you're the offspring of Darth Vader.
Yeah.
And
Darth Vader.
That's right. I remember this.
Yep.
And he's our master.
Right.
Like, we serve the Empire. We have a new master.
They called her Lady Vader.
Lady Vader.
Yeah. That was the coolest name. I was like, that's sick.
Yeah. I was filled with all sorts of emotions because I was like, I'm mad at these Nogri because they killed Ralra. And then all of a sudden they're like, wait, we don't want to kill you. You smell like you. We actually want to be your servants. So that was kind of a trip. It played with my emotions because now it's like, man, Ralra just like, he could be alive still if they just found this out sooner.
Yeah.
And then but there's still a part of me that's like, man, they could still. So I haven't read the other two books yet. There's still a part of me that's like, Leia's like, take me to your home planet, let's figure this out. And it's like, oh, maybe they're like trained assassins or whatever. Maybe this is still like a mind thing. They could still capture her. Still take her prisoner and deliver her to Thrawn and Sabaoth.
So is that what she decides to do at the end, is go to their home planet?
To go to their planet.
I think that's the part I missed, maybe.
And he's uncomfortable because he's like, all right, but we have a new master, and he wouldn't like that. Like,
okay.
But I think they're doing it anyways.
Right. Yeah. Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So that's
kind of where her story leaves off then.
Right.
And then what was she saying at the end, that Akbar got committed for treason?
Yeah. There's a whole thing going on with the Fela. He was a Bothan. This is kind of the Star Wars is like a two-handed thing where it's like action adventure, wizards and smugglers and bounty hunters and stuff. But then, especially in the prequels, George Lucas was like, this is also a political drama.
Yeah.
Right.
And so the politics does play into what Star Wars is, like the DNA of Star Wars. So I feel like even during the prequels, even during the like Clone Wars, when it was like some of those Padme stories, the political stuff, I would kind of just be like
glaze over.
For
sure.
But they do play crucial roles in the overarching like moves within Star Wars. So the deal with Fela is he's a Bothan. The Bothans are referred in one of the movies, I think maybe in A New Hope, the first movie. Mon Mothma is the leader. She's wearing the white short hair, and she's like, many Bothans died. No, I think it is the third movie. Because I can't remember which one it was. But she says many Bothans died to get us these plans to like the Death Star, to explain how to its weakness or whatever. And so the Bothans kind of rise in popularity, and their leader is Felaw or whatever, something Felaw. His last name's Felaw, and they're like rat, animal, wolf kind of humanoids, like.
Okay.
And so he's kind of like this, I'm popular amongst the people and I'm here, but he has differing opinions than everyone, and he's kind of the threat to, like, he's undermining Admiral Akbar, who's now a huge leader, and Mon Mothma. And so he's all like, you don't want to do this, like all this side stuff, and he's only concerned with the government. And so he's really just like this character that's like potentially leading the New Republic to its own civil war. And so they're alluding, Zahn is alluding to Admiral Akbar being accused of treason because Fela is like shady about it. And so I think that's kind of the cliffhanger he was trying to leave us at, was like, we may have resolved this battle on,
but here's a whole nother one that's
but the whole like thing that's actually happening is, even though the Empire doesn't look like a threat, the Republic is not on sturdy ground. And Leia's still AWOL and stuff.
Okay.
Dang, yeah. See, that makes me excited for the next book.
Yeah.
I'm you know, as we kind of wrap up here, like I am genuinely excited to read the next one. I can't wait to go through this whole trilogy. There's one more thing that I wanted to talk about as far as favorite moments. Like we pretty much talked about everything all the way through to the end, including you know, what Leia told Han at the end there. Basically everybody kind of gets away, and Mara goes back to Card, and Card makes a couple deals with Han. He's like, if you can, there's some sort of ship that Han is supposed to send him or like park somewhere for him, and then he also wants a capitalist or what is it? Capital
cruiser.
Not cruiser,
ship?
cargo ship.
Cargo
he wants
ship?
a capital cargo ship. And so Han's like, I'll keep my eyes out.
That's interesting.
But the part that I loved, like one of my favorite parts of the book, is where Luke is stuck inside his little storage shed, and R2-D2 is on the other side, and he like moves the boxes aside, and he finds like an outlet, and he's able to pull enough cable to get him like 3 feet or something, and then he opens up his hand, like his robotic hand that he got at the end of the original trilogy, or maybe it was in the second movie, I forget. But he opens that up because it's a completely like cybernetic hand. And he uses that to like bridge the gap to the door to like open it. And I'm like, dude, that was so cool. I love that so much.
Well, I think he uses like the power source from it, because that's what Han finds when he goes in there.
Right. Yeah.
He's like, that is the power source for, you know, a biotic hand. So we know that something's going on.
Yeah, it's got like the branding and everything on it. I thought that was cool. And it makes me think of like the further I guess economy of Star Wars, because like in Star Wars, I never think about anything in their world having a specific brand per thing. And so when Lando's looking at it and he's like, oh yeah, this is this brand, and they deal in like you know, bio something. He's like, it's a cybernetic that, you know, is bioengineered or whatever. I thought that was cool, because I was like, oh, I wonder what other like big companies there are out in the Star Wars world.
It's so cool.
Like, you know, you play Cyberpunk, and you have like Ahsoka Technologies, and you have in Starfield you have like Ryujin, and like they're like a big like company in there. And I like Starfield and Cyberpunk all very much have like several like big corporations that make
Borderlands,
certain types
too.
of and Borderlands. Yeah, you have like the Hyperion.
Yep.
And you have
Jacobs.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Star Wars you have like Corellia, which is like where the Millennium Falcon was made.
Okay.
Oh,
And
cool.
there's lots of freighters made in Corellia.
Okay.
And then like in episode 2, you've seen this episode 2?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Obi-Wan finds the dart that was shot at the bounty hunter.
Right.
And he takes it to Dexter and he's like, Kamino and Saber Dart or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
okay,
Kamino. And then the other thing that reminds me of is
episode 2 was so good.
I loved it.
Yeah.
People didn't like Jar Jar Binks and those, but he was just Space Shaggy to me.
Yeah.
Space
Shaggy.
I love Jar Jar Binks.
That's
so true.
That's
Totally. Absolutely.
But then IG-88, he was one of the bounty hunters. Darth Vader has the bounty hunters lined up there. He's like, find the Millennium Falcon. I think it's Empire Strikes Back. And one of them's a robot and a droid, and it's IG-88. And there's like a whole backstory behind those guys too. Like I can't remember it, but there's something like a company made all these assassin droids that were pretty much supposed to, I think, kind of remain dormant and just do like regular duties. And then they were going to hit the like end the world button. And then they were supposed to like
just go crazy.
Yeah, do something crazy. But then I think
they become sentient or something.
The company like got destroyed or defeated or something, and then they became like kind of autonomous or whatever, do their own thing or whatever. I think I'm not sure, but yeah, there's lots of like companies and businesses and like even just the Trade Federation, like the B1 battle droids, the like in episode 1, the Gungans fight against the battle droids, like they're I think funded by the Trade Federation. And then the B2 battle droids are introduced in episode 2, and I think they're funded by like a different organization, like the Techno Union, I think. Yeah, all that stuff is
this all stuff that you learned from one of those, like, do you remember those DK books, like those coffee table books?
Oh, I have a bunch
of
those.
Like all the Star Wars.
Yeah.
I saw a bunch of Star Wars books on your shelf. So, as we kind of go into our final thoughts here, have you read other Star Wars books, like in the same, like novels?
Yeah, I've consumed so much Star Wars content. I'm like blanking right now, but I've been trying to, during COVID, I was trying to get into the new books that take place in the High Republic era, which is like
in the like current canon.
And I did audiobooks, but I literally was reading one of them when I was sick.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason I was like, I gotta stop listening because I just gotta sleep.
Yeah,
because I was like so sick. And so I never finished reading it because for some reason every time I thought about it, it just reminded me of how sick I was. And so but I've read other novels, and I have a whole stack of novels that I'm like, I gotta get to these. And they keep coming out with them, and I'm like, stop, dude, I can't.
I need to
keep up. So which is so exciting though, because it's like I've watched everything. And the fact that there's still like a whole world of stuff in the novels is pretty exciting.
That is cool.
The most annoying thing is like I just want more time to to binge it all.
Well, cool. So as far as my final thoughts, I will say that obviously I love this book. I had such a good time with it. And you're talking about like the new books that have come out that are in the new canon. Like for the most part, like besides a couple like distinct things, like the first season of The Mandalorian and Andor.
Okay.
Yeah. Besides those two things, I really haven't enjoyed like really any of the new Star Wars, especially like even the latest trilogy, like everything with Rey Skywalker.
Right.
She's not a Skywalker.
No, she is.
Okay.
So that was the frustrating. Okay. No, I'm on this. I get
it. But yeah, everything like with Rey and everything from Rey onward, I just like did not like.
Yeah, it was rough.
And like I even liked the prequels. Like a lot of people kind of crap all over the prequels and they're like whatnot. I'm like, okay, like you have me with Jar Jar. Like Jar Jar probably like he was a comic relief character, not the best for like a serious like sci-fi kind of thing. But I think the prequels I still love. Like I don't know. I just like them. But you know, it's hard going into a lot of the new Disney stuff, even like Ahsoka and stuff for me. I'm just like, I just don't like it. Like, I feel like it doesn't keep the spirit of the original trilogy or even the prequels. I feel like it's so different from anything that I grew up with, and it just doesn't like fit with me very well. And so reading this book, it reminded me why I liked Star Wars when I was young.
Cool.
And it kind of like opened that up in me again. And so I'm even at the point where I'm like, I don't know. I think if I end up really just loving this trilogy, it might be the thing that gets me into Star Wars. And I'm like, okay, like I want to get like fully into Star Wars now and like really go down this rabbit hole.
Go.
I'm here for you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, luckily I have you just down the street to help me out with my new Star Wars addiction. So yeah, I genuinely had a fantastic time with it, and that is not something that I say probably about most of the things I read. I would say most of the things I read I like and I enjoy, and then I move on and I never think about it again after making my review or podcast episode or whatever. It is very rare that a book comes along where I'm like, I think this might like start a new like franchise interest for me. So I think that's probably the highest praise that I can give this book. What about you, Gabe? Final thoughts?
Yeah, no, I really liked it. I want to go back. I'm gonna go back now and watch. I just was texting Leah and I was like, we gotta have like a marathon. I need to watch all the movies again.
Yeah.
Because it's been such a long time, and like hearing Isaac talk about it, I'm like, dude, I just forget how
big the scope is.
How big the scope is, dude. There's so much to it and like so much awesomeness. So yeah, I'm stoked. And if you pick up the next book, I'll read it with you. I'm here for it.
Great.
Yeah.
I was talking to was it last night or was it sometime today where you were saying like, if you want to read the next one, I'll start reading the next one and I'll do it with you guys. And so I would love
that. Would be awesome. Yeah.
I'll give the audiobook a shot.
Yeah.
It sounds cool. I'd love to hear all the sound effects. And
it is cool. Yeah.
If the ship is annoying or anything.
There's definitely, and it's not
like I said, it's just the one rumble, dude. Every other sound is totally fine.
Yeah.
It adds an ambiance that is just awesome, but there's one freaking like resonance that just bothers me.
Yeah. Well, I have it. I brought it here just in case, but I have the
sequel?
No, I have the it's on cassette.
Oh,
this is like,
is that a cassette?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's like
awesome.
two cassettes that it's red. The Wookiee voices, in my opinion, are like so hard to listen to. Like, is it Sal Porin?
The narrator?
The Nader. Yeah, it should somewhere.
The Nader.
Lawson. I wonder.
Yeah. But I think it's Sal Porin. His name is Sal Porin. He's the Wookiee that has like a lisp.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
And listening to him talk in the cassette here.
Yeah.
Was like, okay, I'm just gonna read this.
Yeah.
I can't. I don't think I can listen. I don't know. I didn't know how much more he was gonna talk, and I was like, oh, I'm just gonna read it because that was hard to listen to. But if the new audio is like kind of new and refreshed and stuff.
The one I have is narrated by Mark Thompson, so it must be a completely different one. But dude, that's cool. You should keep that in
I have all of them
condition.
Yeah.
Oh, you have all
of them? I found them at a thrift store.
Oh, dude, keep those in as pristine condition as you possibly can, because I guarantee you those will be worth money. I'm sure they're worth money now.
Maybe.
That's crazy. That's so cool. Well, as we get out of here, any more final thoughts from you just about just like the book in general, or going on to the next ones or anything like that?
I mean, I really enjoyed it. I'm always a glutton for more Star Wars. And it was really fun like reading this and being like, I gotta talk about this
Yeah.
with Spencer and
Yeah.
his homie. Like,
Yeah.
this is gonna be so fun. Like,
Yeah.
so that was like really cool because I think one of my favorite things is literally just talking about Star Wars. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
when I first met my wife, she's like, I like Star Wars, and then we went to go see uh Rogue One, and she
Oh yeah.
I'm telling this to the world because this is going to be posted on the internet. She
Yeah,
fell
say what you gotta say.
she fell asleep
Oh,
in Rogue
no.
One in the theater, and I was like, okay, something doesn't line up. You said you like Star Wars, so when we first got married, we like, I was like, we're gonna watch all of them. You're gonna ask me every single question that comes to your mind, and we will pause and I'll answer them.
Yeah.
So
Oh my God.
I really, really enjoy talking about Star Wars, like all the
Yeah.
rabbit holes, all the backstory, all the
Yeah.
lore is like favorite thing. So yeah, I will for sure read the next one, and
Cool.
I will
Yep.
love to just throw up facts and reflections.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Ooh,
No,
it's
this
so
was
great.
sweet.
And stuff. Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, this was a ton of fun having you in person here
Yeah.
on the podcast. I think it's the
It's so
first
fun.
time we've done something exactly like this. Like we've had
Yeah.
podcasts like in person, all of us.
No, it totally
But
is.
yeah, this is
Cool.
really cool. It's been cool
Yeah.
to have you on. I know that you were like a little bit nervous going into this, but I think you did fantastic.
really
Sure.
good
Yeah.
job.
Thanks,
Yeah.
man.
And
I'm
I
still
hope-
nervous. It's not over.
Yeah, I hope this makes you think about starting your own like Star Wars podcast or YouTube channel or
It
something.
might happen.
Yeah.
It just might happen.
You'd have so much fun with it.
Oh yeah.
But all right, guys, we are going to wrap it up there. Be sure to keep your eyes peeled for some Cosmere content coming up. We are talking Warbreaker with Bookborn. She's coming back on the channel because that's her favorite Cosmere book. We are so excited for that. We got some Harry Potter stuff and also some Dresden Files short stories. The Harry Potter stuff is tough. I think that is getting pushed out another week, and that we will probably be doing Dresden Files next after we do like our big Halloween episode. So it'll probably be Halloween episode, Dresden Files, Harry Potter, and then Warbreaker, and that'll be kind of our kind of lineup for the next episodes. Because for the most part, we're just having, it's not like a huge deal or anything, but we're having difficulties with like scheduling. And I want to get Bookborn over here for the Harry Potter episode too, because Harry Potter is like her entire life. So I'm like, I want the person who loves Harry Potter to her core to be on that episode.
Yep.
So we're gonna push that out a little bit, and then Warbreaker will be after that. So yeah, I hope you guys will enjoy those. We will also be having a interview with Ronald Malfi. I think we're recording that in November, and depending on when in November we record it, it'll probably be published either end of November or sometime in December. We weren't able to quite make it for Halloween. I was really hoping that would be like our Halloween episode and be like our like horror book author interview. But I'm really excited to have him on the channel. I've read several of his books. As most of you know, Bone White scared the hell out of me. And I just love everything I've read by him so far. So I'm really, really excited to have him on. As always, if you'd like to reach out to us, we are on Twitter, Discord, and Patreon, all of which are linked in the description. I already did the Patreon spiel. You guys know what it is. You get exclusive content over there. If you guys like what you see here, or if you're new or whatever, then subscribe and like and hit the notification bell. That always helps us with the algorithm. YouTube sees that YouTube counts that as engagement and kind of promotes our stuff more and more the more that you subscribe and like. So thank you guys so much for that. Thanks for watching, everyone, and until next time. I'll add the clip in there.
You should add the clip and then do that, but then you should
And then
add
do that
that
afterwards.
after. Yeah, for sure.
I should.
For sure, you gotta leave that in there.
I will totally
Be a
do
blooper.
that. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah.
Oh my god, this is awesome, man. I love talking Star Wars.
Yeah. see,
It's so
fun.
weird. So weird being recorded.
A big shout out to our top patron, Shad Zaman. Thank you so much, man, for all your support.